The dust devils swirled across the main street of White Pine, Nevada. As Olivia Vernon stumbled off the afternoon stage, her worn traveling dress doing little to hide the swell of her belly beneath the fabric. She pressed one hand to the small of her back and winced, trying to ignore the curious stares from the townsfolk who had paused their daily routines to watch the newcomers arrive. The September heat of 1876 bore down mercilessly, and she felt every degree of it as sweat trickled down her spine. "Madam, your bags," the driver called out, tossing her single carpet bag onto the dusty ground with little ceremony. Olivia bent to retrieve it, her movements awkward and slow. When she straightened, she took in the ramshackle buildings lining the street, the saloon with its tinny piano music already drifting through the afternoon air, and the general store with its faded sign. This was supposed to be where her husband's brother lived, where she could find shelter after Thomas had been killed in a mining accident 3 months prior. She pulled the crumpled letter from her pocket, reading the address again, though she had memorized it weeks ago. The mercantile owner, a thin woman with sharp eyes, watched her from the doorway. Olivia approached with what little dignity she could muster. "Excuse me, I'm looking for William Vernon. Do you know where I might find him?" The woman's expression shifted to something like pity mixed with discomfort. "Vernon? Honey, William Vernon lit out of here 2 months back, owed money all over town. Last anyone heard, he was heading to San Francisco." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. She swayed on her feet, one hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. The baby kicked as if in response to her distress. "Are you certain? I received a letter from him just 4 months ago. He told me if anything ever happened to Thomas, I should come here." The woman shook her head. "I'm sorry, dear. He's long gone. Left debts with half the businesses in town." Olivia felt the world tilt. She had spent the last of her money on the stage fare, sold everything she owned except what fit in that single carpet bag. There was nothing left, nowhere to go. The baby would come in 2 months, maybe less, and she was completely alone in a town where she knew no one. "Thank you," she managed to whisper, then turned away before the woman could see the tears threatening to spill. She made her way to the side of the general store and sank onto a wooden crate, her legs no longer willing to hold her weight. The reality of her situation crashed over her in waves. No money, no family, no home, and a child coming soon who would need everything she could not provide. The sun climbed higher, and Olivia knew she should move, should figure something out, but exhaustion and despair kept her rooted to that spot. She watched the town move around her, people going about their business, none of them concerned with the pregnant widow who had nowhere to go. It was nearly an hour later when a tall figure on horseback rode slowly down the main street. The man sat straight in his saddle, his hat pulled low against the sun, and he guided his horse with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his whole life in the saddle. He stopped in front of the general store, dismounting with fluid grace, and it was then that he noticed Olivia sitting in the shade. Graham Jamison had come into town for supplies, the same errand he ran every few weeks when the ranch ran low on flour, sugar, and other necessities his men could not do without. He was 32 years old, had never married, and had built his ranch from nothing over the past decade. He prided himself on being observant, a skill that had kept him alive through Comanche raids, harsh winters, and the general lawlessness that came with territory living. So when he saw the young woman sitting alone, clearly pregnant and clearly in distress, he could not simply walk past. "Madam." His voice was deep but gentle. "Are you all right?" Olivia looked up, shielding her eyes against the sun. The man standing before her was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and gray eyes that held genuine concern. His face was weathered from years in the sun, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though his expression now was serious. "I'm fine, thank you," she said automatically. Though they both knew it was a lie, Graham studied her for a moment longer. She was young, probably mid-20s, with auburn hair pinned up in a style that had come loose during her travels. Her dress was decent but worn, and her face was pale despite the heat. But it was her eyes that caught him, deep brown and filled with a kind of desperate determination that he recognized all too well. "Forgive me for being forward, madam, but you don't look fine. You look like you could use some water and a place to sit that's not a dusty crate." He gestured toward the restaurant across the street. "Would you allow me to buy you lunch?" Olivia's first instinct was to refuse. She had been raised to be proper, to not accept charity from strangers, but that life felt like it belonged to a different person. The woman she was now had no room for pride. "That's very kind, but I could not impose." "It's no imposition. I'm heading there anyway, and I'd appreciate the company." It was not entirely true, but Graham had learned that sometimes a small lie in service of helping someone was acceptable. She hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you. That would be welcome." He offered his hand to help her stand, and she took it, surprised by the strength and steadiness of his grip. They crossed the street together, Graham shortening his long stride to match her slower pace. The restaurant was small but clean, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh bread in the air. The owner, a portly man named Dutch, greeted Graham warmly. "Mr. Jamison, good to see you. Your usual table, please, Dutch, and bring us some cold water right away if you would." They settled into a corner table, and Olivia felt some of the tension leave her shoulders as she sat in a real chair. The water came quickly, and she drank deeply, not realizing how parched she had been. "Thank you, Mr. Jamison," she said quietly. "Graham, please, and you are Olivia Vernon." She set down the glass carefully. "I arrived on the afternoon stage. Welcome to White Pine, Mrs. Vernon." He had noticed the wedding ring on her finger, tarnished but still present. "It's just Olivia, and I'm afraid White Pine may not be welcoming me for long." The words came out before she could stop them, and she found herself telling this stranger everything. Perhaps it was his kind eyes, or perhaps she was simply too tired to keep up pretenses, but the whole story spilled out. Her husband's death in a Colorado mine collapse, the letter from his brother William promising a place to stay, her journey here, only to discover that William had abandoned the town and left her with nothing. Graham listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious as she spoke. When she finished, she looked down at her hands, embarrassed by her outburst. "I apologize. You offered lunch, not a recitation of my troubles. No need to apologize." Graham leaned back in his chair, thinking. He knew what happened to women alone in towns like this, especially pregnant women with no resources. The options were few and grim. Something in his chest tightened at the thought of this woman, who carried herself with such dignity despite her circumstances, being forced into one of those situations. Dutch returned to take their orders, and Graham requested 2 plates of the daily special. When they were alone again, he spoke carefully. "I have a proposition for you, Olivia, and I want you to hear me out before you answer." She looked up, wariness in her eyes. "I own a ranch about an hour's ride from here. It's a good-sized spread, been building it up for 10 years now. I have a house that's far too big for one person, with rooms that sit empty. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, is getting on in years and could use help with the cooking and cleaning." He paused, making sure she was following. "I'm offering you a place to stay, no strings attached. You'd have your own room, food, and safety. When the baby comes, You'll have a roof over your head and people to help. In exchange, you'd help Mrs. Chen with the household duties as much or as little as your condition allows." Olivia stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "You're offering me a home, but you don't even know me. I know you're in trouble through no fault of your own. I know you're going to be a mother soon and need somewhere safe. That's enough for me to know. Why would you do this? What would you gain?" Graham considered the question. "My mother died when I was 12. My father raised me and my sister alone on a hardscrabble farm in Missouri. When I was 16, a neighbor family took us in after our house burned down. They didn't have to. They barely had enough for themselves. But they said that's what people do, they help each other. I've never forgotten that. Maybe I'm paying that kindness forward." The food arrived, and Olivia looked down at the plate of roast beef, potatoes, and vegetables. Her stomach growled audibly, and despite her emotional turmoil, she began to eat. Graham did the same, giving her time to think. What about the people in town? What would they think of a pregnant widow living at your ranch? I'll be honest, some will talk. They always do, but Mrs. Chen will be there as a chaperone, and anyone who knows me knows I'm making an offer of help, nothing more. Besides, I stopped caring what gossips thought a long time ago." Olivia took another bite, her mind racing. She had no other options, but accepting felt like such a huge step. Still, what choice did she have? She could try to find work in town, but who would hire a woman about to give birth? She could use what little energy she had left to move on to another town, but she would arrive in the same situation, only more exhausted and with even less resources. "If I accept, it would only be until I can figure out something more permanent. I won't be a burden longer than necessary." "You wouldn't be a burden at all, and you can stay as long as you need. There's no time limit on kindness." She met his eyes and saw only honesty there. Something in her chest loosened, a knot of fear that had been wound tight since Thomas's death. "Then I accept with deep gratitude. I'll work hard to earn my keep." Graham smiled, and she noticed how it transformed his face, making him look younger. "I have no doubt. Now eat up. You'll need your strength for the ride out to the ranch." They finished their meal talking of simpler things. Graham told her about the ranch, how he had started with a small herd and a lot of determination, and had built it into one of the more successful operations in the area. He ran mostly cattle but also kept horses, which was his true passion. He employed 6 ranch hands, most of whom had been with him for years. Olivia told him about her life before Thomas's death, how they had met in St. Louis where her father had owned a bookstore. Thomas had swept her off her feet with promises of adventure out west. They had only been married 2 years when the accident happened, but they had been happy years, even with the hardships. When they finished eating, Graham settled the bill and helped Olivia to her feet. "I need to collect my supplies, then we can head out. There's a boarding house next door if you'd like to rest while I get everything loaded." "I'd rather help if that's all right. I've been sitting all day on that stage." They walked to the general store together, and Graham introduced her to the proprietor, a man named Silas Hutchins, as his new housekeeper. If Silas found this sudden development strange, he kept it to himself, though his eyes lingered on Olivia's belly with curiosity. While Graham discussed his order with Silas, Olivia wandered the store, looking at the goods on the shelves. It had been so long since she had been anywhere like this without counting every penny. She paused at a display of baby clothes, tiny gowns and blankets, and felt tears prick her eyes again. She had nothing prepared for the baby, had been trying not to think about all the things she would need. "See anything you need?" Graham's voice came from behind her. "No, I'm fine. Just looking." He studied the display, then turned to Silas. "Add a full layette to my order. Everything a new baby would need." "Graham, no, I can't let you do that. Olivia protested. "Consider it a welcoming gift. Every child deserves to be welcomed properly." His tone was gentle but firm, brooking no argument. Olivia felt overwhelmed by this stranger's generosity. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you. I'm not asking you to. Now, is there anything else you need? Anything for yourself?" She shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. It took another hour to get everything loaded into Graham's wagon. He had brought one of his ranch hands with him, a cheerful young man named Pete who tipped his hat to Olivia and made quick work of the heavy bags of flour and feed. Finally, they were ready to leave. Graham helped Olivia onto the wagon seat, then climbed up beside her. Pete would ride Graham's horse back to the ranch, leading the way. As they rolled out of White Pine, Olivia looked back at the town that had promised so much and delivered so little. Then she turned forward, toward whatever future awaited her at the ranch of this kind stranger who had appeared when she needed help most. The ride took just over an hour, following a dirt road that wound through scrub brush and scattered pines. The landscape was harsh but beautiful in its own way, with mountains rising in the distance and the endless blue sky overhead. Graham pointed out landmarks along the way, keeping up an easy conversation that required little response, as if he understood she needed time to process everything. When they crested a final hill, Olivia caught her first glimpse of the ranch. The house was larger than she had expected, a sturdy two-story structure built of wood with a wide front porch. Nearby stood a big barn, several outbuildings and corrals where horses moved lazily in the afternoon heat. It looked prosperous and well-maintained, a testament to Graham's hard work. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It's home. Has been for a long time now." There was pride in his voice, the kind that came from building something with your own hands. As they approached, a small figure emerged from the house. Mrs. Chen was exactly as Olivia had pictured, a tiny Chinese woman with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore a simple dark dress and had the upright bearing of someone who had worked hard all her life. Her weathered face broke into a smile when she saw Graham. "Mr. Graham, you are back early," she called in accented English. Graham pulled the wagon to a stop and hopped down, then helped Olivia descend more carefully. "Mrs. Chen, I'd like you to meet Olivia Vernon. She's going to be staying with us and helping you around the house." Mrs. Chen's sharp eyes took in Olivia's condition immediately, but her expression remained warm. "Welcome, Mrs. Vernon. Come, you must be tired from the journey. I will show you to your room." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." "Please call me Olivia. Then you must call me May. Mrs. Chen makes me feel like my mother-in-law." She smiled, and Olivia felt an instant connection to this woman. Graham and Pete began unloading the wagon while May led Olivia into the house. The interior was as well-maintained as the exterior, with polished wood floors and simple but sturdy furniture. The front door opened into a spacious living area with a large stone fireplace. Beyond that, Olivia could see a dining room and the doorway to what she assumed was the kitchen. May led her up a staircase to the second floor. "Mr. Graham's room is at the end of the hall. This room here is yours." She opened a door to reveal a comfortable bedroom with a large window overlooking the front yard. The bed was covered with a colorful quilt, and there was a washstand, a dresser, and even a small rocking chair in the corner. "It's wonderful," Olivia said, meaning it. After weeks of uncertainty, the sight of this clean, safe room made her want to weep with relief. "You rest now. I will bring up your bag and some fresh water. Dinner is at 6 o'clock. Olivia sank onto the bed, testing its firmness. It was perfect. She lay back just for a moment, and within minutes exhaustion claimed her. She woke to a soft knock on the door. The light coming through the window had changed. grown longer and more golden. She had slept for hours. "Come in," she called, sitting up and trying to smooth her rumpled dress. May entered carrying a pitcher of water and some fresh towels. "You needed the rest. But dinner will be ready soon, and Mr. Graham asks if you feel well enough to join him, or if you would prefer a tray in your room." "I'll come down. I've been enough trouble already." Olivia stood, swaying slightly as the baby shifted. May set down the pitcher and came to steady her. "You are no trouble, and you should not stand up so quickly in your condition. Come, I will help you freshen up." The older woman's capable hands helped Olivia wash her face and hands, then repinned her hair into something more presentable. May's touch was gentle but efficient, and Olivia found herself relaxing under her ministrations. "Thank you, May. You're very kind. Mr. Graham is the kind one. He has a good heart, though he tries to hide it behind all that rancher toughness." May smiled conspiratorially. "He needs people around him. This house is too quiet with just him and me." They went downstairs together, May leading the way to the dining room. Graham was already there, freshly washed and changed into a clean shirt. He stood when they entered. "Olivia, I hope you're feeling better." "Much better, thank you. I didn't mean to sleep so long." "You clearly needed it. Please sit." The table was set simply but with care, and the food May brought out was delicious. There was roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables from the ranch garden, and even a berry pie for dessert. As they ate, Graham told her more about the ranch operations and introduced her to his routines. "I'm usually up before dawn and out with the men until lunchtime. I come back to do paperwork and other business in the afternoon. Evenings are my own, usually spent reading or working on smaller projects. You'll rarely see me during the day, so you and May will have the house to yourselves most of the time." "What should I do to help?" "May, what are your usual duties?" May listed off the daily tasks: cooking, cleaning, laundry, tending the kitchen garden, preserving food, and various other household chores. "But you must not overdo it in your condition. I managed alone before. I can continue to do the heavy work. I want to contribute. I'll do whatever I'm able to do safely." They settled into an easy discussion of how to divide the work, with Graham occasionally interjecting his opinion that Olivia should not push herself too hard. It felt surreal to Olivia, sitting at this table with these kind people, discussing her future as if she truly had one again. After dinner, Graham excused himself to check on the horses, and May shooed Olivia away from helping with the dishes, insisting she rest more. Olivia found herself on the front porch, settling into one of the rocking chairs positioned there. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air had cooled to a pleasant temperature, and she could hear the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Horses nickering, the distant lowing of cattle, men's voices calling good night to each other as they headed to the bunkhouse. Graham emerged from the barn and spotted her on the porch. He climbed the steps and leaned against the railing, looking out at the same sunset. "Beautiful evening," he said. "It really is. I had forgotten how peaceful it could be away from town noise. That's one of the things I love most about this place. The quiet." He paused. "Olivia, I want you to know that you're safe here. I meant what I said in town. Stay as long as you need, and there are no expectations beyond helping May as you're able." "Why are you doing this, Graham? Really?" He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "I told you about the neighbors who helped my family. That's true. But there's more to it. My sister, Sarah, she got into trouble when she was 18. A man made her promises, then disappeared when she found herself in a family way. My father threw her out, said she had brought shame on our family. I was away working on a ranch, trying to send money home. By the time I found out and went looking for her, she had died. Her and the baby both." Olivia's hand went to her heart. Graham, I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago, but I've never forgotten. I've never forgiven myself for not being there. And I've never forgiven my father for turning her away when she needed help most. He finally looked at her. So when I see a woman in trouble, a woman who deserves better than what life has handed her, I can't walk away. I won't be the person who turns away again. I'm not your sister. You don't owe me anything because of what happened to her. I know that. But maybe doing right by you helps me live with what I couldn't do for her. Maybe that's selfish, but it's the truth. Olivia stood and moved to stand beside him at the railing. It's not selfish. It's one of the kindest things anyone has ever done for me. And I promise you, I won't take it for granted. They stood in comfortable silence as the last light faded from the sky and the stars began to emerge. For the first time in months, Olivia felt something like hope stirring in her chest. The next few weeks fell into a pleasant rhythm. Olivia woke each morning to the sound of the ranch coming to life, and after breakfast with Graham and May, she would spend her day helping with the household tasks. May was right about not overdoing it, and they worked out a system where Olivia handled lighter duties like mending, preparing vegetables, and organizing supplies, while May took on the heavier cleaning and laundry. Graham was true to his word about being gone most of the day. Olivia would see him at breakfast, sometimes at lunch if he came back to the house, and always at dinner. Those evening meals became something she looked forward to. Graham was an interesting conversationalist, well-read and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that often surprised her into laughter. He asked about her life before, and she found herself sharing memories of her father's bookstore, the stories she had grown up surrounded by, her love of reading. In turn, he told her about learning to train horses, the challenges of building a ranch in territory that could be unforgiving, the satisfaction of watching something grow from your own efforts. Sometimes after dinner, they would sit on the porch together, and Graham would read aloud from a book while Olivia sewed or simply listened. His voice was soothing, and she found those quiet evenings to be some of the most peaceful moments she had experienced in years. The baby grew active, and sometimes Graham would notice her wince when a particularly strong kick caught her by surprise. "Is everything all right?" he asked one evening, concern crossing his face. "Fine. The baby just has strong opinions about my sitting position." She smiled and shifted in her chair. "May I ask, when is the baby due?" "The doctor I saw back in Colorado said early November. So about 6 weeks now." Graham nodded, and she could see him making mental calculations. "I'll make sure we have the doctor from White Pine come out before then, just to check on you, and I'll have him on standby for when your time comes." "That's not necessary. I'm sure May and I can manage." "Olivia, I'd feel better knowing a doctor had seen you, please, for my peace of mind." She agreed, touched by his concern. True to his word, Graham arranged for Dr. Morrison to visit the following week. The elderly physician examined Olivia and pronounced both her and the baby healthy and progressing normally. "You're doing well, Mrs. Vernon. Continue to rest when you need to, eat well, and don't overexert yourself. When your time comes, send for me. I've delivered more babies than I can count, and I'll make sure you and this little one come through just fine." As October progressed and the weather began to cool, Olivia found herself settling into ranch life more completely than she had expected. She got to know the ranch hands, who were respectful and kind. Pete, the young man who had helped in town, was especially friendly, always ready with a smile and a cheerful greeting. There was also Jake, the ranch foreman, a serious man in his 50s who ran the daily operations with quiet efficiency. Two brothers, Tom and Sam Miller, handled most of the cattle work. A man named Carlos, who had come up from Mexico years ago, was the best rider Olivia had ever seen. And finally, there was old Ben, who had worked ranches all his life and now mostly handled repairs and maintenance around the property. May taught Olivia to make bread the way Graham liked it, and how to cook the hearty meals that men who worked hard all day needed. In exchange, Olivia shared recipes her mother had taught her, and they blended their knowledge to create wonderful dinners. One afternoon, Olivia was in the kitchen helping prepare supper when she heard a commotion outside. Through the window, she saw Graham in the corral with a beautiful chestnut horse. The animal was clearly agitated, tossing its head and dancing away every time Graham approached. "That is the new mare," May said, coming to stand beside her. "Mr. Graham bought her last week. She has spirit, that one." They watched as Graham worked with the horse, his movements patient and steady. He never rushed, never showed frustration, just kept working with calm persistence. Gradually, the mare began to settle, allowing him to come closer. By the time Olivia called them to dinner an hour later, Graham had the horse eating from his hand. He came in dusty and tired but satisfied. "She's going to be a fine animal once she settles in. Just needs to learn to trust." "You're very patient with her," Olivia observed as he washed up. "Patience is the only way with horses. They respond to trust and consistency, not force. Same as people, really." Olivia thought about that, about how he had shown her the same patience and consistency since the day they met. How he had given her space to settle in, to learn to trust this new situation. That night after dinner, they sat on the porch as had become their custom. The air had turned crisp, and Graham had brought out blankets for them to wrap up in. "Graham, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you really never married?" "Never wanted to." He was quiet for a moment. "I came close once. I was about 25 and there was a woman in town, Margaret Shaw. We courted for about 6 months and I thought I was in love. I proposed and she accepted." "What happened?" "I brought her out here to see the ranch. I was so proud of it, wanted to show her everything I was building. But she took one look at this place and said she could never live so far from town, that she had expected I would sell the ranch and we would live in White Pine where there was society and culture." He paused. "I realized then that she had never really seen me. She had seen what she wanted me to be, not who I actually was, so I ended the engagement. She married a banker 6 months later. That must have hurt. It did at the time, but looking back, I'm grateful. I couldn't have been happy living the life she wanted, and she would have been miserable here. Better to have found out before we made a mistake." "You've been alone ever since." "Alone isn't the same as lonely. I have good friends, good work, purpose. That's more than many people can say." He looked over at her. "What about you and Thomas? Were you happy?" "We were." Thomas was kind and adventurous. He always believed something better was just around the corner. That optimism could be frustrating, but it was also part of what I loved about him. He saw possibility everywhere. "You must miss him terribly." "I do. But grief is a strange thing. Some days it's overwhelming and some days it's just a dull ache. Lately, I find myself thinking more about the future than the past. I suppose that's the baby's doing. Hard to dwell on what's gone when you have someone coming who needs you to move forward." That seems like a healthy way to look at it. They fell into silence, watching the stars. Olivia found herself very aware of Graham's presence beside her, the solid dependability of him. Over the past weeks, he had become more than just a benefactor. He was becoming a friend, someone she trusted and enjoyed spending time with. As October drew to a close, Olivia began to feel the first hints that the baby would come soon. She was uncomfortable all the time now, her back ached constantly, and simple tasks left her winded. May fussed over her, insisting she rest more, and Graham watched her with concerned eyes. "The doctor said you should send for him when you feel the time is getting close," he reminded her one evening. "I will. But I'm fine for now. First babies often come late." 2 days later, Olivia woke in the pre-dawn darkness to a sensation that was unmistakable. Her water had broken, and the first contractions were beginning. She lay still for a moment, processing this development, then carefully got out of bed. She needed to wake May and have someone ride for the doctor. But when she opened her door, she nearly collided with Graham, who was apparently heading downstairs for his usual early start. "Olivia, what are you doing up? Are you all right? The baby is coming. Someone needs to fetch Dr. Morrison." Graham's eyes widened, and for a moment he looked almost panicked. Then his usual calm reasserted itself. "All right, I'll send Pete right now. Let me help you back to bed." "I don't think I should be in bed. I need to move. May told me that walking helps." "Then I'll wake May and help you walk." He called for his housekeeper, who appeared quickly, still tying her robe. The older woman took charge immediately, assessing Olivia's condition with experienced eyes. "How far apart are the pains?" "Maybe 10 minutes. It's hard to tell." "We have time then. Mr. Graham, you send for the doctor." "I will take care of Olivia." Graham looked like he wanted to argue, to do something more, but he nodded and hurried down the stairs. Within minutes, Olivia heard a horse thundering away toward town. May helped Olivia dress in a loose nightgown and got her settled in the rocking chair by her window. "First babies take their time. We will wait and let your body do its work." The hours that followed were long and increasingly painful. May stayed with her constantly, bringing water, cool cloths, and quiet encouragement. The contractions grew stronger and closer together. Graham returned from dispatching Pete and hovered anxiously until May shooed him away, telling him to go do his work, and she would call him if he was needed. But he didn't go far. Every time Olivia left her room to walk the hallway, as May encouraged her to do, she could hear him pacing downstairs or working in his office, clearly unable to concentrate on anything else. Dr. Morrison arrived just after noon, his practiced calm a reassuring presence. He examined Olivia and nodded approvingly. "You're progressing well. I'd say you have a few more hours, but everything looks normal. Just keep doing what you're doing." Those few hours felt like an eternity. The pain was relentless, building and building until Olivia was sure she couldn't endure another moment. But May was there, steady and encouraging, and knowing the doctor was present gave her confidence. Finally, as the afternoon sun slanted through her window, Dr. Morrison told her it was time to push. Olivia bore down with all her strength, following his instructions, driven by an instinct older than thought. And then, in a rush of pain and relief, the baby came into the world. The cry was immediate and strong, and Dr. Morrison held up a squalling, red-faced infant. "It's a boy, Mrs. Vernon. A healthy, strong boy. A son." She had a son. Olivia lay back against the pillows, exhausted and overwhelmed, as the doctor tended to the baby and May helped clean her up. Then the small, warm bundle was placed in her arms, and Olivia looked down into the tiny face of her child. He had dark hair, matted and damp, and when he opened his eyes, they were a murky blue that would probably change color in the coming weeks. His face was scrunched and red, his hands waving in agitation, but to Olivia, he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I'm your mama." There was a soft knock at the door, and Graham's voice called out tentatively, "Is everyone all right?" May opened the door. "Come in, Mr. Graham. Come meet the new arrival." Graham entered slowly, his hat in his hands, his expression a mixture of awe and nervousness. He approached the bed carefully, as if afraid he might disturb something. "Olivia, are you well?" The doctor said everything went fine, but I wanted to hear it from you. I'm well. Tired, but well. She smiled up at him. Would you like to meet him? Him? Graham's face broke into a wide smile. A boy. A very healthy boy, Dr. Morrison confirmed, packing up his instruments. Both mother and child came through perfectly. Mrs. Vernon, you did excellent work. Graham moved closer, looking down at the baby with an expression of such tender wonder that it made Olivia's heart ache. He's so small. He won't be for long. Babies grow fast. She adjusted the blanket. Would you like to hold him? I don't know. I might drop him. You won't. Here. She held the baby up, and after a moment's hesitation, Graham carefully took the tiny bundle into his strong arms. He looked terrified and delighted in equal measure, holding the baby as if he were made of spun glass. The infant squirmed and made small mewling sounds, and Graham's expression melted into something soft and protective. What will you name him? He asked quietly. Olivia had thought about this during the long months of pregnancy. She had considered naming the baby after Thomas if it was a boy, but that felt like it would tie her son too tightly to the past, to a father he would never know. She wanted him to have his own identity, his own future. I thought I might name him Owen. Owen Thomas Vernon. Owen, Graham repeated, looking down at the baby. That's a good, strong name. He held the child a moment longer, then carefully returned him to Olivia's arms. I should let you rest. But if you need anything, anything at all, you just call out. Thank you, Graham, for everything. He nodded and left, May following to show the doctor out and prepare some broth for Olivia. Alone with her son, Olivia felt the full weight of her new reality settle over her. She was a mother now. This tiny person depended on her completely. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The days that followed were a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and stolen moments of sleep. Owen was a good baby, healthy and strong-lunged, and May proved invaluable in helping Olivia navigate the challenges of new motherhood. The older woman had raised 5 children of her own back in China before coming to America, and her experience was reassuring. Graham was attentive but respectful of Olivia's need for rest and privacy. He would check in each evening after dinner, asking how she was feeling, if she needed anything. Sometimes she would find him standing by the cradle they had set up in her room, just watching Owen sleep with that same look of wonder on his face. You're very good with him, Olivia observed one evening about a week after the birth. She had finally felt well enough to come down for dinner, and they were sitting in the living room while May cleaned up the kitchen. I like babies. They're honest about what they need. No pretense. He was holding Owen, who had fallen asleep against his chest, one tiny hand curled into Graham's shirt. He seems to like you too. He doesn't settle for just anyone like that. He probably just likes the warmth. Babies aren't particular. That's not true. Babies know who they trust. Olivia watched them together, this strong, capable man holding her infant son with such gentle care. Something shifted in her chest, a feeling she wasn't ready to name yet. As November turned to December, Olivia regained her strength and began taking on more of the household duties again. Owen settled into a routine, and the ranch prepared for winter. The first snow came early in December, transforming the landscape into something magical. Olivia bundled Owen up and took him out onto the porch to see the snow. Graham came around the corner of the house and stopped when he saw them. His first snow, Olivia said. I wanted him to see it. Graham climbed the steps and stood beside her, looking down at the baby who was staring at the falling flakes with wide eyes. Think he'll remember? Probably not. But I will. They stood together watching the snow fall, and Olivia found herself thinking about how much had changed in just a few months. She had arrived here desperate and alone, and now she had a home, friends, and a healthy son. And she had Graham, whose presence in her life had become as natural as breathing. Christmas approached, and Olivia wanted to do something special to thank Graham and May for all they had done. She spent her spare moments sewing a new shirt for Graham, measuring one of his old ones in secret to get the size right. For May, she made a beautiful embroidered handkerchief, knowing the older woman appreciated fine needlework. On Christmas morning, they exchanged gifts in the living room. Graham had somehow procured toys for Owen, simple wooden things that would be perfect when he was a bit older. For Olivia, he had ordered books from a catalog, knowing how much she missed having new things to read. "Graham, this is too much," she protested, looking at the stack of 3 beautiful volumes. "It's not enough. You've brought life to this house, Olivia. It's not just a building anymore, it's a home." She handed him her package, suddenly nervous that her gift wouldn't measure up. But when he unwrapped the shirt and held it up, his face lit with genuine pleasure. "You made this, Olivia, it's beautiful work. I wanted to give you something meaningful. You've given me so much." He put on the shirt right then, and it fit perfectly. Olivia felt a flush of pride and something else, something warmer and more complicated. That evening, after May had retired and Owen was asleep, Graham built up the fire and they sat together in its warmth. Snow fell softly outside the windows, and the house was quiet and peaceful. "This has been the best Christmas I've had in years," Graham said quietly. "Having people to share it with makes all the difference. It's been wonderful for me too. I never expected when I arrived here that I would find not just shelter but a real home." "About that." Graham shifted in his chair, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Olivia, I need to talk to you about something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." Her heart began to beat faster. "All right. I know you've been thinking about your future, about what comes next for you and Owen. And I know you've talked about finding a place of your own, maybe in town, once you've saved up enough from helping May." "Yes, I have thought about that. I want to ask you to reconsider. I want to ask you to stay here, permanently." Olivia's breath caught. "Graham, let me finish, please." He leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "These past few months, having you here, it's changed everything for me. I wake up looking forward to breakfast conversations. I hurry through my work so I can get back for dinner. I find myself thinking about you during the day, wondering what you and Owen are doing if you need anything. Graham, you've been so kind, but you don't owe me. This isn't about owing anyone anything. Olivia, I've fallen in love with you." The words came out in a rush, as if he had been holding them back for so long they could no longer be contained. "I love your strength, your kindness, the way you faced everything life threw at you with such courage. I love hearing you laugh, seeing you with Owen. I love everything about you." Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes. "You love me." "I do. And I love that boy upstairs as if he were my own blood. I want to be a father to him, to raise him and teach him and watch him grow. I want to give him the kind of home every child deserves." "What are you saying?" Graham got up and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "I'm saying I want you to marry me, not because you need protection or a home, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want us to be a real family." Olivia looked down at their joined hands, her mind racing. She had felt herself growing attached to Graham over the past months, had caught herself watching for him, listening for his step. She enjoyed his company more than anyone else's, valued his opinion, trusted his judgment. When had friendship turned into something deeper? "I care about you too, Graham, so much. But I need to know that you've really thought this through. Owen isn't your son. Taking on another man's child, that's not a small thing. He could be mine in every way that matters." "Olivia, from the moment I held him, I felt something. I can't explain it, but he's already in my heart. And I promise you I would love him and protect him and be the best father I know how to be." And what about people in town? They'll talk. A widow remarrying so quickly. Let them talk. I don't care what anyone thinks except you. Do you love me, Olivia? She looked into his face, this good man who had saved her and asked nothing in return, who had shown her more kindness than she had known existed. Did she love him? Yes, she realized. Somewhere along the way, without her even noticing, love had taken root and grown. I do love you, she whispered. I think I have for a while now, but I was afraid to admit it. Graham's face transformed with joy. Then say yes. Marry me. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I'll marry you. He pulled her to her feet and into his arms, holding her close. Then he pulled back just enough to look into her face, and slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle and sweet, full of promise and hope. When they finally separated, both were breathless. I love you, Olivia Vernon. I love you too, Graham Jamison. They were married in early January, a simple ceremony in the living room of the ranch house with just Dr. Morrison and the ranch hands in attendance. Olivia wore a dress of soft blue that May had helped her make, and Graham wore the shirt she had sewn for Christmas. Owen, dressed in his finest gown, slept peacefully in May's arms through the whole ceremony. The justice of the peace from White Pine performed the service, and when he pronounced them husband and wife, Graham kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to Olivia's eyes. That night, after the small celebration dinner and after Owen had been put to bed, Graham carried Olivia over the threshold of his bedroom, which was now their bedroom. He set her down gently, his eyes searching hers. Are you sure about this? We can wait if you need more time. I'm sure. I'm your wife now, Graham. I want to be your wife in every way. He kissed her then, deeper than before, and Olivia felt herself respond with a passion that surprised her. Graham was patient and gentle, mindful of the fact that she had given birth just 2 months before, and when they finally came together, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Afterward, lying in his arms, Olivia felt a peace she had never known. This was where she belonged. This man, this life, this future they would build together. Happy, Graham murmured against her hair. Happier than I ever thought I could be again. The winter passed in a haze of contentment. Olivia settled into her role as Graham's wife, and he proved to be everything she could have hoped for in a husband. He was affectionate and attentive, always making sure she knew how much he loved her. He doted on Owen, spending his evenings playing with the baby, reading to him, walking him around the house when he fussed. The ranch hands accepted the new arrangement without comment, though Olivia suspected May had warned them to be respectful. In town, there was some talk, as they had expected, but most people seemed genuinely happy for them. Dr. Morrison told anyone who would listen that it was the most sensible arrangement he had ever seen. Spring came, bringing new life to the ranch. The cattle had calves, the horses had foals, and the world seemed full of possibility. Owen was growing fast, his eyes turning from blue to brown, his personality beginning to emerge. He was a happy baby, quick to smile, especially when Graham was around. One evening in late April, as they sat on the porch watching Owen crawl across the floorboards, Graham turned to Olivia with a serious expression. I've been thinking about something, and I want to know what you think. What is it? I want to legally adopt Owen. Give him my last name. I know he has his birth father's name, and I don't want to erase Thomas's memory, but I want Owen to be mine in the eyes of the law. I want there to be no question that he's my son. Olivia felt her eyes fill with tears. Graham, are you sure? That's a big step. I've never been more sure of anything. He is my son, Olivia. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, which is just as important. I want him to know that I chose him, that I wanted him. Then yes, I think that would be wonderful. Owen Jamison. It sounds right. They made the trip to White Pine the following week and signed the papers with the circuit judge. Owen Thomas Vernon became Owen Thomas Jamison, and when the judge handed Graham the certificate, he held it like it was the most precious thing in the world. As summer approached, Olivia began to suspect that she might be pregnant again. Her monthly courses had stopped, and she felt the same telltale signs she remembered from carrying Owen. She waited until she was certain before telling Graham. She chose a quiet evening when they were alone on the porch, Owen already asleep upstairs. "Graham, I have something to tell you." He looked up from the ledger he had been reviewing, giving her his full attention. "What is it?" "I'm expecting. We're going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared at her, then a slow smile spread across his face, growing into an expression of pure joy. "Really? We're going to have a baby?" "Yes, due sometime in January, I think." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "A baby, our baby." He pulled back to look at her face. "How do you feel? Are you well?" "I'm fine. A little tired, but fine." "You have to take care of yourself. Don't overdo things. We'll get help for May if you need to rest more." Olivia laughed. "Graham, I'm pregnant, not fragile, but yes, I'll be careful." The summer passed with Olivia's belly growing steadily. This pregnancy felt different from the first. She was happy and secure, surrounded by love and support. There was no fear, no uncertainty, just joyful anticipation. Owen took his first steps in August, lurching across the kitchen floor into Graham's waiting arms. Graham scooped him up, laughing and praising him, and Olivia watched with a full heart. This was her family. This was her life. And it was better than anything she could have imagined. Fall brought the harvest and preparations for winter. Graham had a bumper crop of hay, and the cattle had done well. The ranch was prospering, and he talked about expanding the horse breeding operation, which he was truly passionate about. As Olivia's due date approached, Dr. Morrison made regular visits, checking on her and the baby. Everything progressed normally, and he assured them both that he expected no complications. On a cold night in late January, Olivia went into labor. It was faster than it had been with Owen, and just after midnight, she delivered a healthy baby girl with a shock of dark hair and lungs that announced her displeasure at being born into a cold world. Graham was allowed in immediately after the birth, and when Dr. Morrison placed the baby in his arms, Olivia saw tears on her husband's cheeks. "A daughter," he whispered. "We have a daughter." "What should we name her?" Olivia asked, exhausted but happy. Graham looked down at the tiny, perfect face of his daughter. "What about Grace? Grace Ann Jamison." "Grace, I love it. It's perfect." The baby settled into the family easily. Owen, now over a year old, was fascinated by his little sister, wanting to touch her and bring her his toys. Graham was completely smitten, carrying Grace everywhere, talking to her constantly. May joked that the house had never been so full of noise and chaos, but her eyes shone with happiness. She loved having children around again. The years that followed were full and happy. The ranch continued to prosper, allowing Graham to pursue his dream of breeding quality horses. His animals became known throughout Nevada and beyond for their quality and temperament. Owen grew into a bright, energetic boy who followed Graham everywhere, learning about ranching and horses. Grace became a spirited little girl with her father wrapped around her finger. In the spring of 1881, Olivia gave birth to another son, whom they named Henry. And 2 years after that, twin girls arrived, Emma and Elizabeth, completing their family. The ranch house that had once been too big and too quiet was now filled with the sounds of children playing, arguing, laughing. Meals were chaotic affairs with food flying and stories being told, and Graham presiding over it all with a look of contentment that never faded. Olivia sometimes thought back to that desperate day when she had arrived in White Pine with nothing but a carpetbag and a prayer. She had been saved by a stranger who turned out to be the love of her life. Graham had given her everything: a home, a family, a future full of love and possibility. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they stood on that same porch where so many evenings had been spent, where their love had grown from friendship into something unbreakable. The children were all asleep, and for once, the house was quiet. "You ever regret it?" Graham asked, pulling her close. "Taking a chance on a rancher you barely knew," Olivia laughed. "Not for a single moment. You gave me everything when I had nothing. You loved me when I thought I would never love again. You gave my son your name and your heart. How could I ever regret that? I'm the one who got the better end of this deal. You brought life and love to this place. You made it a home. You made me happier than I ever thought I could be." "We saved each other," Olivia said softly. "That day in White Pine, we both needed something and we found it in each other." He kissed her then, as the stars came out overhead and the ranch settled into nighttime quiet. Behind them, the house held their sleeping children. Around them, the land they had built a life on stretched out under the Nevada sky. And between them was a love that had grown from kindness into something eternal. Years continued to pass, bringing their share of joys and challenges. There were hard winters when they lost cattle, and hot summers when the creek ran low. There were injuries and illnesses that scared them, and losses that grieved them when old friends passed. But through it all, Graham and Olivia stood together. They raised their children with love and discipline, teaching them the value of hard work and kindness. Owen grew into a fine young man who took over much of the ranch operations, eventually marrying a schoolteacher from White Pine and building a house on the western edge of the property. Grace became an accomplished horsewoman, with a gift for training that matched her father's. She shocked everyone by refusing several marriage proposals to continue working the ranch, insisting she would only marry a man who understood that she would never give up the work she loved. Henry became a veterinarian, studying back east before returning to Nevada to practice. The twins were inseparable, one becoming a teacher like Owen's wife, the other a talented artist whose paintings of ranch life began to sell in San Francisco galleries. Graham's hair turned silver, and lines deepened around his eyes, but his love for Olivia never wavered. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year. They had built something rare and precious, a partnership based on mutual respect, shared dreams, and unwavering devotion. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party. The ranch house was filled with family and friends, with neighbors from miles around coming to celebrate. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and speeches that brought tears to everyone's eyes. When Graham stood to speak, the room fell quiet. He looked at Olivia, sitting beside him, still beautiful to him after all these years, and he spoke from the heart. 25 years ago, I rode into White Pine for supplies and came home with the greatest treasure I've ever found. Olivia, you've given me everything that matters in this world. You've been my partner, my love, my best friend. You've given me children who fill my heart with pride and joy. You've made every day of these 25 years better than the one before." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I look back at the man I was before you, living alone in this big house, and I barely recognize him. You taught me what it means to truly live, to love without holding back, to build a family and a legacy. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely rancher. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for every single day." There was not a dry eye in the house as he sat down and kissed his wife. Olivia held his hand tightly, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet once more, they walked out to the porch. The same porch where so much of their story had unfolded, where they had courted and dreamed and built their life together. 25 years, Olivia said, leaning against Graham's shoulder. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like forever. The best 25 years of my life, Graham replied, and I'm greedy enough to want 25 more. We'll see what we can do about that, Olivia said with a smile. They stood together watching the stars, the same stars that had witnessed the beginning of their love story. The ranch spread out around them, no longer just Graham's dream but the legacy they had built together for their children and grandchildren. The seasons continued their endless cycle. Springs brought new life to the land, summers tested their endurance, autumns rewarded their labor, and winters gave them time to rest and reflect. Through it all, the ranch thrived because it was built on a foundation of love and hard work. May eventually retired, moving to San Francisco to live with her daughter, but she visited often, always delighted to see how the children had grown. The ranch hands came and went over the years, but several stayed on for decades, becoming part of the extended family. As Graham and Olivia moved into their later years, they gradually handed over more responsibility to Owen and the other children. But they never stopped working entirely, never stopped being active in the life of the ranch. On a spring morning in 1901, Graham and Olivia sat on the porch with their morning coffee, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. They were both in their 70s now, their hands gnarled from years of work, their bodies slower than they once were, but their minds sharp and their love undiminished. "You remember the day we met?" Olivia asked, as she sometimes did. "Every detail," Graham replied. "You were sitting on a crate outside the general store, looking lost and determined at the same time. I took one look at you and knew my life was about to change. You were so kind. I was terrified, but you made me feel safe. I'm glad. That's all I've ever wanted to do, keep you safe and happy. You've done that and so much more." Olivia reached over and took his hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. "I think about that scared, pregnant widow who stepped off the stage in white pine, and I can barely believe that was me. Look at everything that came from that one moment when you offered me a home." "My home is yours if you'll have it," Graham quoted softly. Those were the easiest words I ever spoke because they were the truth. This place was never truly home until you were in it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the ranch came to life around them. They could see their son directing the ranch hands, their daughter working with a young horse in the corral, their grandchildren playing in the yard. The house behind them was filled with the evidence of their life together. Photographs on the walls, children's drawings, the accumulated treasures of decades. "We did good, didn't we?" Olivia said. "We did better than good. We built something that will last, something that will go on long after we're gone. Our children, our grandchildren, they'll tell the story of this place and the love that built it. I love you, Graham Jamison. I have loved you for over 25 years, and I will love you for whatever time we have left. And I love you, Olivia Jamison. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." As the sun rose higher and the day began in earnest, they rose from their chairs and went inside together, ready to face whatever the day would bring. Because they had each other, and that had always been enough. The years granted them were generous. Graham lived to be 82, and Olivia followed him 3 years later at 79. When they passed, they left behind a thriving ranch, 5 children, 16 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. But more than that, They left a legacy of love, kindness, and the belief that sometimes the best things in life come from offering help to a stranger in need. The ranch remained in the family for generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But the original story, of the pregnant widow who had nowhere to go and the rancher who said his home was hers if she would have it, was told and retold around dinner tables and campfires. It became the foundation myth of the family, the reminder that love could bloom in the most unexpected places, and that kindness was never wasted. And on summer evenings, when the family gathered on that same porch that had witnessed so much of Graham and Olivia's story, they could almost feel the presence of their ancestors, standing together watching the sunset, their love eternal as the land itself. The story of Graham and Olivia became more than just a family tale. It became a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of love, and the truth that sometimes the family you choose is just as important as the family you're born into. Owen, though not Graham's biological son, carried forward his father's legacy with pride, teaching his own children the values Graham had instilled in him. The ranch that Graham had built and Olivia had made a home stood for over a century as a monument to their love, each generation adding their own improvements, but never forgetting the foundation that had been laid. The story of how it all began was passed down carefully, ensuring that future generations would know about the September day in 1876, when a desperate woman and a kind-hearted rancher found each other and changed both their lives forever. In the end, theirs was a love story that proved love could be found even in the darkest moments, that hope could spring from despair, and that sometimes a simple act of kindness could transform into the greatest love story ever told. They had built a life together from nothing, raised a family, created a legacy, and shown everyone around them what true love looked like. Their story had a beginning, middle, and end, all of it lived fully and completely, all of it adding up to a life well lived and a love that never faded. And that, perhaps, was the greatest gift they left behind, the knowledge that love, real love, could overcome any obstacle and create something beautiful and lasting. The ranch still stands, the house still echoes with family gatherings, and the porch still offers the same view of the Nevada landscape that Graham and Olivia loved so much. And if you listen closely on a quiet evening, you might almost hear the echo of their voices, speaking words of love and hope that resonate through the generations. A reminder that the greatest adventures often begin with a simple offer of help and a willingness to see where love might lead.